Welcome to The Way of the Lotus. My name is Leni, Leth.
And I'm Dr. Mary Contreras. The news on TV and newspapers and online can be overwhelming. And if you're anything like me, you can feel like there's nothing you can do. And wow, this can take me to a very sad place. But I know that isn't the truth. There are ways in which I can change my world each and every day.
I aspire to be like the lotus with its beautiful flower, which is a beautiful flower symbolizing resilience, strength, and integrity. It comes up every morning through murky water, looking pristine and beautiful, just to descend back down through murky water at nightfall.
In life, even during the most difficult and challenging times, we can discover important aspects about ourselves and others. We will be sharing inspirational and uplifting stories of ordinary people who have done extraordinary things with their lives.
Our mission is to inspire, to uplift, so at the end of the podcast, you will want to go out and do extraordinary things with your life that will not only benefit you, but mankind and the world as well.
We believe the world is filled with love and compassion. How you get there is another story. We will be listening to those inspiring stories together and hopefully expanding our awareness and opinions about ourselves and the world. And our time today will be spent talking with Sonya Saldana. We spoke with Sonya earlier, and I was struck by her power and how she listens to her inner wisdom and voice. And Sonya, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you both. I'm so happy to be with you, and thank you for inviting me onto this show. It's a tall order you have created. I hope to only be able to share my story and, through that maybe help somebody out there who is facing a crossroad decision or, just listening and learning to a different way of living, because my path has always been one that is less traveled rather than the road that everybody takes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
So, tell us about yourself and the journey that you have
Thank
taken.
you. I will. And the only place I can really think of is to really kind of start from the beginning, because the beginning of my story really sets up where I am today and really the path that I have taken. When I was very young, I was raised by my grandmother from the age of 0 through 5. She was the foundation, and she is what instilled so much in me to this day. She was known as a curandera, and for those of you who don't know what that means, that is a medicine woman. She was born in Mexico in Chihuahua in the 1800s and then came across to California before the 1900s.
Wow.
She was pretty much raised herself and her children. She had 13 kids.
Oh my gosh. Sorry for that reaction, but wow.
That's a wow.
That's quite a taxation on the human body.
Wow.
Tell me about it. I don't know how she did it. She must have been pregnant, half of her life, the majority of her life.
Yes.
But she had a lot of kids. She was a very strong woman. When I was living with her, all the kids were, out of the house and grown. And she did an amazing job as the matriarch of the family, so to speak. She instilled education as a priority. All the men went to college, not the women. Back in those days, that was the role that the men took, and the women were, the mothers. Nonetheless, with 13 kids, she was able to produce really successful individuals and human beings.
Remarkable.
She must have been incredible.
She was really, an incredible woman. So education was an important part of her life and her values, which she carried on. I learned how to read in both English and Spanish by the time I was 3, because she taught me in both languages. Wow. So when I went to preschool, I already had a fundamental knowledge. And that instilled the path in my own education. When I moved to live with my mother. My mother then carried on that education, that importance of getting education. So I was a straight A student my whole life. This is why I went to Berkeley. And that was good. That was a part of, who I am. And to this day, I have a thirst for knowledge, and I'm feeding my brain constantly. I believe it's because of what my grandmother instilled in me. And she was a woman of many talents. Not only did she help heal people, but she grew her own medicines in her yard. She made things. She was continuously active. She lived to be 90 something. I can't remember the years. And she was active the whole time. So there was a lot of impressions that she made upon me at such a young age that would come into play much later in life. So when I went to go live with my mother wasn't necessarily a good mother. She was an alcoholic, and we moved around a lot. I probably went to 10 elementary schools or moved twice a year.
Oh my gosh, that must have been quite a challenge for you.
It was, yeah, it was absolutely a challenge. I ran away when I was 14. I went to go live with an aunt. She died when I was 16, so at the age of 16, I was pretty much on my own. I lived with my cousins, and then really prepared for, life after that, which was college. My goal immediately, because it had been instilled in me at such a young age, was to get my education so that I could be fully independent, which I did. And then I chose my career path, which was in the pharmaceutical industry. And so this was in the 90s, and I became a sales rep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What made you choose the pharmaceutical industry?
Yes, and did that have any connection to your grandmother being a woman of healing, do you think, or?
Well, that is an excellent question, and sometimes I think, it's kind of a crossroads. Was I given this life? Was that the path I was supposed to take? Was it coincidence? Because when I chose that, it was merely based on a conversation that I had with another fellow student. We were graduating. I was in my senior year, and I was working for a nonprofit organization to raise money for universities. I already had a job, but I had a conversation with a woman, and she said, "Oh, I'm graduating, and I'm going to go sell drugs, and it pays a lot of money." I was like, wow, okay. So honestly, she instilled this notion, and I had my job already set up before even graduation, but I knew it was a 1-year contract to go and run the fundraising campaign at UC Santa Barbara. So that was, signed, sealed, and delivered, but I needed a career after that. So literally within my career while I was at Santa Barbara working, I started exploring pharmaceuticals, and I started knocking on doors, et cetera, learning about it. And when I finished my year contract, I went to go interview for pharmaceutical sales rep position. My first job was with Abbott Laboratories, and they had a massive interviewing kind of an invitational forum. You show up at a conference, and so what they did was they opened up the doors, and there was at least 1,000 people who showed up. And they had people interview. Day one, you were interviewed for 10 minutes. And if you made the cut in 10 minutes, you were called back for a second interview the next day. You were interviewed for an hour. If you were selected, then you were to go on to the third day, where you were interviewed for 2 hours. And, with different senior level people each time. And then the fourth day, you were offered the job if you were selected. So out of 1,000, there were 5 positions, and I was offered one of the positions.
So what do you think it was about you that kept you on that track to get to that place?
I just have always been a go-getter. My first interview, the 10-minute one, we talked nothing about qualifications. And I was able to connect we talked about football.
All right.
And that led me to the second interview, which was a little bit more strict. But I think in that, and something that I carry with me to this day, is being able to connect with the person that you're talking to. And once you make a connection, I think they, understand that that's the connection.
It paves the road.
And pharmaceutical sales is a very relationship building job. In fact, that's really what the number one goal is.
I love how you've said relationship builder, because even when we spoke before this podcast, I sensed that you were really an incredible listener to me and what I was talking about, and responded in such a way that made me feel like you really heard me. So you really have that gift.
Thank you. Yeah. And I really do try to, I don't know where it came from or why I do it, but I really believe that when you're in somebody else's presence, no matter what they do, who they are, where you are, I really am present for them, and I give them my full attention.
That's the gift.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the
And
gift.
wouldn't it be such a better world if we all did that, right?
Yeah. In some ways, yeah. Yeah.
Well, you said earlier that you are a lifelong learner, that you love to learn and keep learning. So I think there's that aspect about you. But what do you think, was there something in your childhood or with your grandmother or with your family that helped you to see that human connection, and being in the present moment was so important with whoever you were speaking with or being with?
It wasn't a consciously taught skill. It is just something that I've always done, and I can't say that I've had necessarily role models that I'm emulating. I think it's an internal component.
You don't think it's learned behavior?
I think it can be.
But not with you. You think you...
I think for me particularly, it is innate. It's just something that I've always done. I have learned through my training in business. Listening is critical. I think I've taken that seriously, though. I think a lot of people are told to listen, but they just don't. And I think I agree with you. If people took the time to listen to the other person speak, it would be endearing to the world, and it just doesn't happen. Sadly, I think people are really concerned, or I believe that people really want to share their story.
Yes.
Want to be heard.
They want to be heard.
Yeah.
And they want to share their story. Yeah. That, I think each of us have incredible stories, every single person, right?
Absolutely.
And we're often not even asked to share that story, and people are yearning for that, I believe.
Yeah, and I've just taken on naturally kind of the role of the listener. I feel that people do want to be heard, so I listen. And that's what I give in silence, so to speak, without, requests.
So that's part of your success, the ability to listen.
I think that's what separated me from...
To be in the presence of somebody else and listening, the fact that you're listening is the gift you give them. It is a gift.
I agree.
Yeah.
So you got into this incredible pharmaceutical. I mean, out of 1,000 people, you're then chosen to go on that path. And what was that journey like for you?
I loved it. I loved every moment of it. When I was 14, I decided I wanted to be a businesswoman. I said I want to be an example for women succeeding in business. So I just felt by nature I had fallen into something that I just loved. And it combined learning about disease states and science. You go through rigorous training to understand the human body. You go through the same almost training as a physician, but if you're trying to educate a physician, they learn everything. We're learning bits and pieces. So if we're working on the brain, my focus specifically was in neurology and anti-infectives, and then aesthetics. Those were probably the 3 areas that I went really deep in. But you have to be able to communicate with the physician you're trained to in science.
So you could choose what area you wanted to go into in terms of
my entree in. I didn't get a choice. They were hiring, but they were hiring for a specific product launch. And when I was it's very hard to get into the industry, so I would have gone into any area. But as you grow within a company, then you are given the choice to go into certain areas. So when I was given the choice, I went into aesthetics, and that was just different from other areas. But I do love neurology. I love the study of the brain, and I think it's lent itself to kind of where I am now. But I loved my career. I absolutely loved everything about it. I went after sales, I went into marketing. After marketing, I went to advertising and consulting. I've traveled, lived on a plane practically, but I loved every moment of it. I loved creating. When I became a consultant, I was a strategist. So you have to create the concepts of which educational programs are built on, and you don't do that in a silo. You do it with a team, and you do it with physicians, and you do it with the best physicians, and then that's used as a platform to educate the masses of physicians. And so it lit my brain up. I was always talking to people. I was always traveling, going to different places. So I had a lot of fun. I just really did. I loved what I did.
And you were in that career for how long?
Probably until I was in my mid-40s. So once they call it jumping ship or crossing over. So once I left big pharma and niche pharma and went into the advertising and consulting side, of which then the people who I was, the marketers hire. That's where I became. But I started off with an upstart company, and we grew that. When I was the first senior vice president that was hired for the group. And the company was making $7 million. And when I left, we all left with the goal to sell the company once it reached $100 million. And we all contributed at building the company in 5 years to hit $100 million.
Wow.
So it was, it was a crazy run. It was a fun run. And then I left, and that just changed my life when I left.
what made you decide to leave?
Well, the company was sold, goal accomplished. That was great. That was the goal. So when a company buys another company, often it's absorbed and also disseminated. So they'll take what is most valuable to them and disseminate what is not valuable. That's just common practice. And so it was time to leave. Rightly so. And at that point, it was a crossroads in my life and in my business, and I thought I was going to venture into starting my own company, but it wasn't my path forward. And so as we talked about, that internal compass that kicked in for me, where at the time I didn't know why, but I just knew this wasn't the path for me. And so that became a very soul-searching, questioning if I've done this and I loved it and I can't do it anymore for this reason I'm not sure, then what am I intended to do? And honestly, I can't answer that question to this day, because life is a journey and we're always evolving.
But you definitely took a different path at that point.
Completely different path, yeah. And everything has been so different. I just left that to live life, really. I had dedicated my life to work and loved it. And that's kind of everything I did was work. And so now my goal was to experience life, to build a garden, to have a dog, to take walks, to stop, to smell the flowers, to sit in your garden, your backyard, to have friends over, you know, to enjoy life, to do what I always thought normal people were doing, but I wasn't the normal one doing it. I was off keeping my life so busy. So that's what I did. I did all the things.
Did you ever want children?
I thought about it, but I don't. This wasn't my journey in this lifetime, and it often came from like when I was with my mother. I was like, oh dear God, please don't get pregnant, because then I would become the take care of said child, and so that never happened. But I was so busy just trying to get my own life in order that it was really hard to imagine having kids and doing that. And then two, because of the way I was raised, and if I had chosen, and this was a conscientious decision, to have children, then I wanted that to be my career. I didn't want to delineate and divide. That would be my number one sole focus. And I just, just didn't go down that path. I didn't want both, and at the same time I was too busy trying to just make money. And so I didn't go down that path. I don't have any regrets whatsoever. I do think that oftentimes as a woman with no children maybe can't relate to women who have had children entirely. And so many women would say, well, I do both. And yes, they do, and they do it successfully, and they should, and I applaud them, but that's just not what I wanted. I didn't want to do both.
And then your journey took you to Italy.
My journey took me to Italy. So as I left the company and was at the crossroads, one of my many passions that I have is travel. And I thought, well, let's go to Italy. Let's go to Italy for 2 months, and let's not be a tourist in Italy, but learn the culture and live like the locals live. So I went to Italy for 2 months and rented a cute little apartment in Lake Como on the lake in Argenio, a little tiny town of 200, and I shopped at the local. I took the bus like the locals. I bought my groceries 45 minutes away. I came back. I went to the local markets. I lived like the locals did, and what I discovered was that the lifestyle that Italians had was so beautiful. Just so beautiful. They had conversations. They spent time walking in the piazza. You have your morning coffee. Relationships are something that they value, and I think in America relationships have been lost, or it's shifted. It's different. It's not, no, those deep level of conversations are just different. I fell in love with the way they ate. So healthy, I fell in love with the way they lived, the gardens that everybody had. And it was something then that I wanted to experience for myself. So after 2 months, I decided to move to Italy, and I worked very hard to make it happen in 8 months after that trip to move to Italy, where I moved to the Alps, and then life really took over. I really didn't, it was not corporate. It was everything that I did was actually that I thought about when I was on a plane or in a business meeting. What would it be like if I didn't have this life? What would I like to do? And so I kind of checked the box on so many different things. I was like, wow, it would be amazing to run a B&B, to have people in your home and to feed them. It would be amazing to volunteer because that's something that I've always wanted to do. So little by little, I began to check those boxes. So I was a host for, bed and breakfast, my own, out of my own home. And I did volunteer for, a couple of years. So I did all these things, which was really living life and taking chances and not having everything planned out the way I always had in my life prior to that, and letting things happen along the way. So it was an amazing experience. I'm happy I was able to have that.
That is so beautiful. I think, though, some people would be listening going, well, I can't just drop things and go do what I want to do. But yes, you did.
Yeah.
And you were successful at that and totally enjoyed that, and your journey continues. What do you think gave you the strength to believe that you could just drop a career and try to create what it is you really were seeking for?
It's a great question. I think I have just... well, let me answer it kind of in the reverse. I believe too that for me in particular, that experiencing life is really important and taking risks. I'm not afraid to take a risk.
Yeah, I sense you have no fear.
I just don't. And if you're afraid of risk, then you're afraid of failure. And I don't see failure just is not a word in my vocabulary. If things don't work out, it's part of the lesson that we are experiencing, and we just learn from. I believe people should fail at things. I believe you need to know how to fail and to grow from that, if you're using failure as the descriptive term. But that word is just a horrible word, I think, that Americans
for most
impose.
People,
And it's just an experience in the end.
I heard it said, and I just love this quote, I think it was by an actor, Denzel Washington. He said, there are no failures, only opportunities.
Absolutely. And I truly, truly, truly believe that. I have fallen down many times, but you just get up and you analyze, what did I do wrong, but not for, I don't dwell on it. I looked at what is the learning lesson and what can I do differently. And sometimes things just happen that you have no control of. And you have to learn how to live through that. So these are, this is just, I guess, I don't know if it's innate, or my philosophical perspective. Perhaps it's because I've had to do things on my own. Maybe I've felt more comfortable taking a leap into the unknown, because I think I've had so much change in my life. Change doesn't fear me. In fact, I love change. I do very well in change, and it probably has to do with my upbringing and how I came up. I'm comfortable in it.
Well, you seem incredibly resilient to me. Somebody who is not set back by any change or things that happen, but instead sees that as an opportunity to just continue on and take maybe even a different path. So I think that's incredible about you. You also seem to be a woman who has a deep trust of herself.
That is a work in progress every day. But and I consciously try to learn to have that trust, but it takes work. It does. And it takes work in how I work at it personally is through a lot of meditation and yoga, self-love. I've consciously studied my own thought patterns, and eliminate negative thoughts that come in. I purposely cancel them. So I'm very conscientious about how I think. What are the words that come into my head, and how do they sit with me? And I change my own vernacular if I need to, or if I catch myself. That all takes work. It doesn't come.
Mental work, yeah.
It's mental work, and you have to you have to invest the time. As you mentioned, I'm an avid learner, so I learn about this. I listen to frequency waves, which change your brain waves in terms of how you receive information, how to use your brains. I'm studying quantum physics that has to deal with energy. Everybody talks about how, everybody's afraid to use the word spiritual, and they put the words around woo-woo. Or are you into woo-woo? But the truth is that we are now at a very exciting point in time where any thought about any woo-woo or spiritual thought that is out there is now proven and backed by science.
Yes.
So it's not woo-woo. It's now, there's scientific evidence. You can take any type of topic and you can find scientific proof. They open up people's brains and hearts and they put monitors on them, and the two are exactly connected, your brain and your heart. How you manipulate that, the energy, how it pulsates, the energy that you put out. All this is scientifically proven. Yoga has been or was, it's yoga, how it helps your heart rate. There's science behind it. The physicians in Japan, when there's a cancer patient, they gather around the patient's bed and they meditate and they send loving energy, and they have scientific proof that this heals people with cancer.
So you are familiar with Dr. Emoto and the research he did with water?
I am not.
You are not.
But are you talking about how the water carries energy?
Yes, and memory.
I'm not
And
specific.
he was a Japanese doctor.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just beautiful. And it's based on the fact that we are, I think, 84% water. And that water will respond to what you're thinking. So he did bottles, and he had Tibetan monks bless the water, and then he put tags on other bottles saying, "I hate you," and then the water would be frozen to very low levels, and he would photograph the water, which then turned into crystals, and the water that had been blessed or been told it was love turned into these magnificent crystals, and the water that was hated looked like a witch's brew. And again, it goes back to how are we thinking and how it affects our physiology.
Yes.
Because we are not 70%.
Well, and you talked about that. You said you really pay attention to the words that you use about yourself and your life. So can you talk to me a little bit more about that, the process and the learning that you have gone through to get there?
Sure. It's again, one interest kind of parlays into another interest. And a lot of it, this is where the tie to the pharmaceutical industry also ties into where I currently am. But because I was in neurology, I already had a basis or fundamental kind of knowledge of the brain. I just continued to learn about it. But one of the things are, there's 60,000 thoughts
per day
that we have. And if you stand outside of yourself and observe your thoughts, and this probably came from I'm sure it did, a difficult moment in my life where I'm maybe challenged with something, and I thought, well, I need to study myself to understand why I'm in this position. I can't think of a specific reason, but that probably got me to thinking about my thoughts. And
because they're creative. Thoughts are creative.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So that would make sense.
And it just kind of, and so when you stop and you listen, and it's hard, maybe you can do it for 60 seconds or 30 seconds. But if you actually spend a whole day, so I would mentally challenge myself and give myself little games or,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just observe your thoughts. So for a long time, I just observed my thoughts. And you're like, okay, that's where a lot of light bulbs start coming on. And then I went kind of to the second phase. So now that I observe what's coming in, now I'm going to change it. And so then I would change it to my desired outcome. Or if I was thinking negatively, immediately I would eliminate that. And so that is something that I still practice. But when I first started doing this, it's incredibly challenging. It's incredibly enlightening and challenging.
Exhausting too. and exhausting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of energy.
It does.
Why do you think some people aren't willing to even try that or do that? Because I think there are some people that's either they don't have the awareness, so they're not even going to go there to look at their own thoughts. Or I hear some friends say to me, I can't even quiet my mind, for meditation when I talk to them about, try meditation. I think that can help. I can't even quiet my mind. Mm-hmm. And I think, well, it's not necessarily about quieting your mind. Mm-hmm. Maybe paying attention to what's going on in your mind. No, I really don't want to pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. It's too much work.
Yeah, well, it's overwhelming maybe, or just... I don't know. What is your thought on that,
I think
Sonya?
you just said the answer.
Oh.
No, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I think that's what I hear. So an interesting kind of observation when I started volunteering in Italy, a lot of the people that I volunteered with would be like, please help me organize my life. Please help me achieve this. Please help me do this. But what I really found out when you did try to help is that there's a lot of resistance. Mm-hmm. And I think by nature people are afraid. Because probably fear is a motivator for a lot. Fear to not do a lot of things, really. I think people were afraid and people didn't want to change. And they didn't have the desire and interest.
And it's too much work because mental work is probably the most difficult work there is.
I agree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I really do believe that a lot of it can't be bothered. It's too much work, and probably based in not realizing just how powerful and transformational it is once you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's also culturally and socially, when is it ever talked about? Exactly. It goes back to how we're raised in a culture. You're raised to go to school, to define what you want to be, to get the house, to have the kids, to drive the car, to live a certain status. But when are you ever taught to, learn about your own thoughts, to address your desires? So this is something that you kind of have to take on yourself, should you have an interest and a desire. Now everything's changing. There's information that's out there. You have tools and resources now, but and it's changing quickly, which is great to see, and yet still so far behind where we need to be in terms of awareness. But I seek out knowledge. But for those who don't, lack of awareness. How do you do it? Yeah. They want to, but they don't know how. Then it's hard work. You sometimes have to tap into those emotions and those fears and those roadblocks with honesty. Well, that's hard to look at. A lot of us are carrying guilt.
And to meet yourself, which you do when you are silent, you're facing yourself, is daunting, and it can be very frightening. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really can be frightening.
Absolutely. And I remember being at a point in my career where I was afraid of my own personal power. Who was going to teach me how to be successful at this next level where I don't have any role models? How do I do this? So I think a lot of people fear their own personal power also, because you're, again, going back to, you're not taught how to, the topics don't even come up at the table oftentimes. I think in special circles, like the way neurologists raise their kids, well, that's a very different conversation they're having at the dinner table than a layperson. The neurologist is raising their kids with brain challenges, expressing yourself, not damaging your brain, listening to your thoughts. It's all can be taught. I don't think I taught myself along the way, but I also had some of that built in, probably through life experiences of survival. But it is an awareness. It is education that is required to understand, to know what to do, to be given the tools to be able to change should you want to. And then there's all the baggage that people are carrying around with them that they need to address. And it's heavy. It's emotional. Mm-hmm. and it's scary, but nobody wants to open up that emotional door because then you might have to cry, you know?
And what if you can't close the door again?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And usually you can't.
Yeah.
They say when you have a certain type of awareness about when you become aware, you can't go back.
You have that taste. You tasted what it feels like. There's no going back.
There's no going back. Yeah, and I believe that that's probably happened to me several points in my life as I become aware of something different or where I want to take my life or where I want to see it, and I'm not done in my life in terms of my personal goals or where I want to be and what I want to do. I'm 54, but I'm nowhere near being done.
But it's a never-ending thing anyway.
Exactly.
You keep on doing this until the end of your day.
Yes.
Let me ask, do you have any regrets?
None.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Is that a choice that you've made? You decided, I don't want to regret anything? Or is it because there is absolutely nothing for you to regret?
A little bit of both. I've really tried to achieve my dreams, so I don't have regrets.
Well, there could be regrets about maybe incidences with other people, relationship, that sort of thing.
True. Life is like a moving river, you flow through, and life brings you issues and obstacles. It's how you work through them. So they're gonna come. You just don't hold on to regrets. You just try to evolve with and roll with the punches that life kind of gives you and grow from there, And I think if you live from a place, within your heart, I think it's hard to have regrets because of where you're coming from internally, you're that internal compass. So I tell my brain every day that you are no longer a leader because I use my brain for my career. It was always about my brain, improving, the logic. Now my brain takes a backseat to my heart.
Oh, I love that you said that. Your brain takes a backseat to your heart.
And your brain is 5,000 times more powerful than your heart is 5,000 times more powerful than your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, if you were to write your autobiography, what would the title be?
Oh, the title. Whew. It's because somewhere in my life I probably will write a book or two, but it'll be very specific. I'm not at a point right now where I have an autobiography. The title is unknown, and that's probably because I'm not quite there yet. My path is still being created. I can't sum it up. I just can't. I can't put myself in a label.
You're still on the journey. You're still going. Yeah. So if you were to give one piece of advice about what you were talking about, really reshaping your thoughts, being aware of your thoughts, and then making this conscious decision to change them in a more positive way, what advice would you give somebody about doing that, or how to go about doing that? What would be a first step, do you think?
Just start listening to your body. Try to start tuning in to your own heartbeat, to your own internal thoughts. Whatever is coming up, we're taught to deny them. Start listening to nothing outside, but start listening inside. And honestly, that's how I rule my life. I no longer use external influences to guide me. Every decision I make is coming from my heart and not my brain, because my heart leads my path now moving forward. So if it feels right, I do it. If I hesitate, that means it's a no, or I get a strong no.
Your body tells you.
And I ask my body, I ask my heart, my gut.
And how do you feel? I know when I ask myself, is it a positive or negative expansion? If it's a positive, negative, it contracts. How do you feel? What does it feel for you?
Sometimes it's my heart expanding and contracting. Sometimes it's I don't know if it's not, it's just a feeling, maybe it's not so specific. And if I don't know the answer, I don't make a decision until I
very
know
wise.
the answer.
Until you really feel it in your gut and your heart. Oh my gosh, Sonya, thank you
You so much.
You're
This has been
welcome.
absolutely delightful.
You are
Thank
an
you.
amazing woman.
Well, thank you. So are you too. Thank you so much for inviting me. I wish you so much luck with this podcast. But
Well, we
you
might have
two
to
are
come and ask you for help.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Sonya.
Thank
it has
you.
been a true
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
I just knew it when I first laid eyes on you.